Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about the global recession or the probability of us having a global recession um, and the impact of that. Are we going to have food shortages, loss of jobs, just an economic downturn and bad situation for everyone? So let me take a look at these things and I want to lay out my argument for you guys and how we're going to prepare for that type of situation. God forbid anything like that ever happens, at least we're prepared. I'd rather be prepared for the worst than not prepared at all. But before I begin, this channel is all about financial independence, being safeguarding all of your wealth. And if that's important to you, please subscribe to my channel and hit that like button if this content provides any type of value for you. Let's get into it. So the gross domestic product, the GDP, we hear about this number all the time. And for quarter one of 2022, we were negative 1.5. And all indications are that for this upcoming Q2, it's going to be the same result. We're going to be negative. We probably won't get that information until next month. So once we get that number, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be negative due to the Fed high rates, chances are we're going to be under, so we're going to be technically or officially into a recession. What are the causes for the incoming recession? I'm going to say inflation is big, right? And we're going to touch about that. Stock market crash, real estate crash, increased bankruptcies, defaults, and foreclosures, and the backdrop of the war in Ukraine. So inflation, the last CPI number was 8.6. Economists were expecting it to be less than that to show that inflation was going down. Unfortunately, it went up. And as a result, Jay Powell, the Fed chairman, he increased it, the Fed high rate to 0.75 instead of everyone anticipating the 0.50. Fuel prices are out of control. And fuel, believe it or not, impacts a lot of things. It impacts how we get our food with trucks. It impacts the farmers and the diesel fuel in their tractors. And it just trickles. If it costs more for them, it's going to cost us, the consumer. So inflation is pretty bad. So worldwide, it's not only, just to the US, we got it all over. And if you look at these numbers here, Charlie Bilio of Twitter, he outlined all of this, and I found his his page very helpful. If you look at the top inflation numbers for every country, you see, if we go to 8%, you see US at 8% or 8.6, Spain 8.7, Netherlands 8.8, UK 9.9, Europe 9.1, Brazil 11.7, Poland 13.9, Russia 17.1, Argentina 60.7, Turkey 73.5, and Venezuela is out of control at 167. I don't even know how you make it out there, but that's crazy. Now that's just to show you it's not only a U.S. problem, this is global. So there was a survey looking at inflation here, and they surveyed millennials, and they said millennials were 3 times more likely to cut back on large purchases compared to baby boomers. Millennials have helped fuel the housing market after being sheepish compared with previous generations, but inflation may cause them to retrench. Stock market. So as you can see, if you've been following along, unless you're under a rock, the U.S. stock market is taking a big hit. Although there was a rally this week, and that's expected during bear markets, but I don't anticipate that it's going to keep going higher for much longer. You got Jay Powell. Next month, he's probably going to increase the Fed rate another 0.75. You got the backdrop of the war. So chances are, inflation is going to keep going up, and the stock market is going to be impacted. So if you see the S&P fell 3.88%, marking its lowest level since March 2021. So that's pretty low. The benchmark closed in bear market territory, down more than 20% from its high after trading there briefly on the intraday basis about 3 weeks ago. So, the S&P 500 has gone down. That's an indication that the stock market is going to be a little bleeding for a bit more. I don't see a turnaround maybe until next year. So in a bear market, normally you have the sideways movement where, you have these brief periods of some good movement, and then we go back down. Real estate. So real estate was, I would say, astronomical. After the backdrop of the code C-19, you have money being flowed into the economy by the government, and because of that, all this excess money, and you add low interest rates equal high and great real estate market. I mean, homes were appreciating like crazy. However, once you take that money out of the economy and then you hike interest rates, obviously the real estate market is going to be impacted. And real estate sometimes it lags other markets just because, mortgage applications and all of that. We probably won't see anything until the 3-month or 6-month period. So Lennar posted their Q2 earnings, their report, and Lennar is the second biggest home builder in the U.S. And in that report, there was some very important information. They said, so far in June, new orders, traffic sales, incentives, and cancellations have worsened in many of our markets due to a rapid spike in mortgage rates and headwinds from negative economic headlines. Many markets have also slowed as we've entered a seasonally slower part of the year. I like to give you some color on our markets across the country. They really fall into 3 categories. 1, markets reflecting no and minimal impacts. 2, markets reflecting modest impacts. And 3, markets reflecting more significant impacts. During the second quarter and so far in June, we've had 19 markets that continue to perform well. These markets are 6 in our Florida markets: New Jersey, Maryland, Charlotte, Indianapolis, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Phoenix, San Diego, Orange County, and the Inland Empire. All of these markets are benefiting from extremely low inventory. And when many are benefiting from strong local economic growth, and migration, while these markets have continued to be strong, our sales pace and pricing power has started to flatten or has flattened in each of these markets. To maintain sales momentum, we have offered mortgage buy-down programs and normalized market incentives. Our Category 2 market reflects modest softening in pricing and a slowdown in the markets, including 10 markets. Now, there are 1 and 2 market. So we didn't even get into the third one, which is even worse. So Lennar is starting to see a slowdown, and these markets that are hot right now is because there's low inventory. What happens when the mortgage applications slow down and the builders keep building? Then they won't have that low inventory anymore. It's going to be more inventory and more homes on the market, and prices will come down. At least that's my opinion, not financial advice. Increased bankruptcies, credit defaults. So also in an economic downturn, you're going to see most people, they can't keep up with their payments. Mortgages may start to, become late, foreclosures, people can't pay rent. You have car loans, the repo guy comes out, takes everything, boats, all these things are impacted. And according to this article here, the S&P Dow Jones and Experian Consumer Credit Default Indices showed a 4th straight increase in the composite rate last month, increasing to 2 basis points to 0.48%. The bank card default rate saw the largest increase of 12 basis points, up to 2.27% from February figure of 2.15%, according to the latest figures. The auto loan default rose by 4 basis points to 0.56%, while the mortgage first rate was only 1 basis point higher at 0.35. The composite rate has been increasing steadily from 0.46% in February to 0.43% in January and 0.40% in December of last year. Meanwhile, 4 of the 5 metropolitan statistical areas reported higher default rates since last month. War in Ukraine. This has been going on for a while, and it's not getting any better. If anything, I see this lasting longer. Putin has dug his heels in. He's not giving up. This guy has a cocky attitude, and he will not accept the loss. And from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing in all these reports, it looks like they're advancing. They were in eastern Ukraine. Now they're moving more west. If you look at this article here, it looks like they are attacking Kyiv now. So I don't see this ending anytime soon. And it's bad. It's just depressing the entire economy, not only for Russia and Ukraine, but, Russia and Ukraine, they need the money that they get from their exports, and all the other countries that import their grains and wheat and fuel, they're being impacted as well. So this is definitely not a good thing. And that's going to result into global food shortages, and that's the title of the thumbnail. I wanted to talk about that. So I don't feel like media is really talking about it enough, and that's why I wanted to bring attention to it. The UN chief warns of catastrophe from global food shortage. So the head of the United Nations warned Friday that the world faces catastrophe because of the growing shortage of food around the globe. He said the war in Ukraine has added to the disruptions caused by climate change, corona, C-19, and inequality to produce an unprecedented global hunger crisis already affecting hundreds of millions of people. There is a real risk that multiple famines will be declared in 2022. He also said that harvests across Asia, Africa, and Americas will take a hit as farmers around the world struggle to cope with rising fertilizer and energy prices. He goes on to say this year's food access issues could be or become next year's global food shortage. No country will be immune to the social and economic repercussions of such a catastrophe. He also said that I guess UN negotiators were working on a deal that would enable Ukraine to export food, including via the Black Sea, and let Russia bring food and fertilizer to world markets without restrictions. As because of the war, a lot of countries have imposed sanctions on Russia, and that's what's impacting a lot of them exporting food. They're also blocking ports in Ukraine and not letting Ukraine export as well. So this is an issue. It's trickling down. It's impacting all markets and countries. Also, U.S. News article says rising food and energy prices, in part sparked by the war of Ukraine, could kill millions both and directly and indirectly. Food shortages work in two ways. One is you have the tragedy of people actually starving to death, but second is that you have the fact that often much large numbers of people are poorly nourished, and that makes them more vulnerable to existing disease. So Biden wants to talk about this during the G7 meeting. Obviously it's on his radar, just like it's on mine. So it's something that we all should be taking a look at. It's pretty serious. Just because you don't hear about it on the evening news, it's out there, something to think about, and maybe should start preparing for it. Prepare for the worst. You never know. So shortages of the commodities will be tough to avoid, given that they've essentially have essential ingredients in the majority of store-bought foods, and they're already raising the cost of goods worldwide. Now, if you've been to the supermarket lately, whether it could be Publix, Walmart, Sam's Club, or wherever, you will notice from last year just the bills keep getting higher and higher and higher. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. Not to mention the gas you have to put in your car to get to the supermarket. It's just compounding. So, this is something that we got to take a look at. He says that a large contributor of the gap in the supply of wheat, grain, and corn is the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia and Ukraine amount for 29% of the global wheat exports, and Ukraine is the world's third largest producer of grain and fourth largest exporter of corn. The supply in the U.S. has also been reduced due to droughts in wheat-growing regions of the western Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. So the resulting impact of this will be wheat prices increased by 70% this year. 70%. The combination of war, domestic labor, and transport deficits and climate change paints a harrowing picture of the grocery industry over the next few months. We could be looking well into 2023 until the supply chain straightens itself out. According to a USDA report projecting less supply and higher prices in the U.S. for grains like wheat and corn, there's a growing concern in the food industry that U.S. crop problems, largely driven by drought, could add more stress on the food supply chain. The drought impacts are going to impact, as a result, less food being on the market, which is going to further put pressure on food prices on the top of some of the inflationary pressures we've already been seeing. So this isn't good, man. The global food shortages, meat. We've seen shortages and skyrocketing prices of meat since the beginning of the C-19 pandemic. So this is no surprise. However, due to the lack of hay, grass, and grains, ranchers have had to sell and slaughter some of their herds. This is leading to a lack of meat supply and an increase in meat prices. Also, some meat processing plants have been forced to reduce slaughtering capacity due to missing employees, which is worsening the shortages. The meatpacking industry's costs are at an all-time high after some businesses drew new labor by raising wages, funding vaccination efforts, and offering free community college to workers' children to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars this year. Also, the meat industry is dealing with truck driver shortages, raw material shortages, plastic, paper, aluminum, and CO2 examples. And the truck driver shortage is big, and that could be due to people maybe not wanting to work anymore, or it could just be to companies realizing the price of fuel and they're cutting down their fleet. And it's impacting everything. It trickles down. So also we have here, essential, let's see here, food prep. So due to everything we just talked about, how the shortages could be a thing. We got to prepare for it. And these are some of the things I'm doing to prepare. And, you may have a spouse that thinks maybe you're outlandish or going crazy, thinking that you're a conspiracy theorist. And, you know, in my house, that goes on too. So what I do, I live in an area that's prone to hurricanes. So I just say we're preparing for hurricanes, but I know I'm preparing for this. So when we go to the supermarket, we're buying a little bit extra just to stock the pantry. Flour, white rice, pasta, beef jerky, canned soup, beans, canned fruit, peanut butter, oats, salt, sugar, spices, baking soda, baking powder, powdered milk, bouillon cubes, meats. You know, put them in the freezer. Go to Sam's, Costco, get them in bulk and put them in the freezer. Nuts, canned tuna, vacuum sealed tuna, honey, tea, bottled water, and although this isn't food, TP and paper towels. Remember what happened in the beginning of C19, how crazy that was. So folks, that's all I got for you. Like always, stay safe. If this content, you know, if you found any value in this, please hit the subscribe button, you know, and I'll produce more stuff like this, of stuff that I'm seeing in the market, stuff that I'm concerned about, and hit the like button. It helps me out a lot, helps the channel out a lot. Everyone, I hope you stay safe, and until next time, see you later.